Thank you.
I came in here this morning and some ladies from here, they'd seen him in. So I walked to go all the way around to get my coffee. And halfway around, here come 3 or 4 guys, and one of them's got 2 cups. And so they bought me coffee this morning. That's free, but the thought was I remembered, and I didn't have to walk all the way around. We got good people in here.
Did y'all get to see
Yeah.
this list?
Good.
Donut list?
Well, Glenn and I made a safe trip all the way to Ohio. The wedding went well, and then we got home at a decent time with no problem, so. I'm back.
Thank you, Lord.
Okay, we're in 1 Timothy, chapter 3, 1 through 16. Remember now, just to kind of rehash this, Paul's writing this letter to Timothy, and Timothy is in Ephesus. During the first missionary journey, I'll underline together, these two, Timothy and Paul, the two found that the church in Ephesus had some serious problems. Paul felt the need to continue on to Macedonia, so he left Timothy there to get this Christianity back in order again. It was just going haywire. Paul had 2 concerns. We said this a few weeks ago, but just so you will remember about Timothy. He said, 1, would the older people listen to the words coming from a young person like Timothy? That's a legitimate concern. And 2, Timothy was uncircumcised, and could this become a problem trying to convert Jews to Christianity? And it could. Paul knew right away that the church in Ephesus needed organization and good leadership. Paul recognized how strong Timothy was in the new Christian faith. Timothy was definitely a leader and an organizer, just what that church needed in Ephesus. It was not Paul's plan for Timothy to stay in Ephesus and be the leader of the church, but to train others to become leaders in this church, and then he could move on. In chapter 3, Paul gives Timothy some pointers about how to select these leaders. In verse 1 for chapter 3, he said, "Here is a trustworthy saying, whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task." It's similar to what we do in our life group by giving members the opportunity to select a place to serve. Paul said, whoever aspires to be an overseer, and that's a good term to call all the offices in a church. What do you want to call it? Deacons, elders, overseer is a good word. In the next verses, Paul tells Timothy how to select those who aspire to be leaders. But before we read these next verses, let's take a look at our leaders at Lake Point. According to Lake Point Church, the terms bishop, pastor, and elders is synonymous. Lake Point does not use the term bishop. Who does use it? We heard that word in this class. Benali, yeah. He calls himself bishop. But, no big deal, kind of the same thing. Lake Point does not use these terms, but they do have pastors and elders. Now, pastors and elders are the overseers for the church. Pastors, as you know, are responsible for delivering the message to God to large groups of people. That's your senior pastor. Lake Point has many other pastors. You've got a senior pastor, then you have what they call teaching pastors. Mike Bro is a teaching pastor. Children's have their own pastor. The teenage guys, they have a pastor of the youth, like that. So they're all kind of equal except that senior pastor. He's head, and it's the way it should be. Pastors are paid jobs. Elders are not paid, and they have 8 elders at Lake Point. Obviously, the life group teachers are not paid. No protest.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I always wondered why we don't have deacons. In all the other Baptist churches I've been in, we had deacons which served more the people, like
Yeah.
going to the hospitals and doing all the stuff that, the
Yeah,
one
we're gonna
pastor
get, I'm
can't.
gonna get to that in a minute.
Okay.
The difference between elders and deacons. Yeah,
Okay.
good question. Now we're gonna continue reading in chapter 3 and see what Paul has to say to Timothy about selecting the right leaders. As we read over these verses, see if you qualify to be an overseer. Now, you don't have to be a pastor. When your week comes that you're the donut coordinator, you're an overseer, okay? Because there were some grumpy people here. The women moved outside.
Now
They were
you
so
think I
mad.
wasn't thinking about that in the line?
You slapped them down and get out of the
I'd have
way.
went home if I hadn't been afraid I couldn't come back.
That's right. We'd vote you out. Okay. So in verse 2, Paul's telling Timothy, now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, and might leave someone out, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, and able to teach. I didn't realize that able to teach was included in that. Not given to drunkenness. Who does that
Now
take
you know
out?
why there's that many signs up in our class.
Yeah. Not violent, but gentle. Not quarrelsome. Not a lover of money. The man that my daughter married, he is a true gentleman. So he didn't know it when I was giving the service there, and I said, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to tell something on one of these two that they don't know. And both of them were like, oh no, is it me? I said, Donna, you're safe. I said, we're going to tell it on Brad. But a year ago, I had never met him. I'd seen him on a Zoom thing. I never met him. And one day last year, he called. I said, Brad Stewart, he's never called me before. I've never talked to him. And here's the conversation. He says, Mr. Merle, I may be old-fashioned, but I would like to ask permission to marry your daughter. And I said, okay. And I paused for a few minutes. I said, he must be shaking when I paused. I said, under one condition. Now he's really shaking. You call me Pawpaw like the rest of the people, or Wally, but not Mr. Merle. Okay? Then he said, thank you, Mr. Merle. He really is a true gentleman. I couldn't be more pleased with him. So let's talk about not violent, but gentle. That's a wonderful thing if you can be gentle. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him. And he must not do so in a manner worthy of respect. He must do it in a manner of respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? It's kind of tough if you're going to select officers in the church and you see one of these guys, oh, he's great, but family problems. It's not my rules, Paul, and God's given these things to Paul. He must not be a recent convert, or he may become conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. Kind of a strange verse. If someone is new to the faith, some things, but I couldn't get a handle on the same judgment as the devil. Kind of a tough one there.
Well, how long was Timothy a Christian before he got this job?
It doesn't tell us, but he was new in the faith. So now his job is to be in Ephesus and to select some leaders in the church. So Paul's saying these things to Timothy to get the right one, to get good leaders, and then you can move on. Make sense? Yeah. Yes.
That scripture that you just read, a key word to me in it is conceited.
Good. Yeah.
And, you know, Lucifer was so enamored of himself, so
Yeah.
conceited that he wanted to be God.
Yeah.
And so a new convert might be so proud of himself for making this decision
Yeah.
that he might fall into the,
Same fate as not Lucifer, Satan.
not really serving God but himself.
Yeah, yeah, and that can happen. That can happen in this church. Somebody gets selected and we don't realize
It
it.
happens everywhere.
You really have to check people out first. He must also have a good reputation with the outsiders, okay? So that he will not fall into disgrace and into the devil's trap. The devil's going to try to pull these leaders away. In the same way, deacons are to be worthy of respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine, and not pursuing dishonest gain. They must keep hold of the deep truths of the faith with a clear conscience. And I underline this, and I put it in bold print. They must first be tested. Oh. And then, if there is nothing against them, let them serve as deacons. Now, that's a lot of qualifications, and these can apply to elders and deacons and pastors as well. Anybody that's an overseer, these are the qualifications. They're not real easy sometimes. But this is not the only place in the scripture that lists qualifications for deacons and elders. It's in another book of the New Testament. Anybody know what it is? Titus. Let's go there and see. Titus 1, verse 5. The reason I left you in Crete was that you might put in order what was left unfinished and appoint elders in every town, and that I directed you. An elder must be, and see, kind of repeats this letter where you first wrote to Timothy. An elder must be blameless, faithful to his wife, a man whose children believe and are not open to the charge of being wild and disobedient. Wild. We got anybody here that's wild?
I was.
No, I'm not going to name them. Not me.
Not anymore.
Since an overseer, and that's why I like that word overseer, it's just an umbrella color, all these leadership pieces. Overseer manages God's household. He must be blameless, not overbearing, not quick-tempered, Does that get to some of us sometimes? Well, we're not applying for deacons, so I guess it's okay. Not given to drunkenness, not violent, not pursuing dishonest gain. Continue on in Titus. He said, rather he must be hospitable, one who loves what is good, who is self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. God, that's a lot. He must hold firmly to the trustworthy message as it has been taught, so that he can encourage others by sound doctrine and refute those who oppose it. Now, Doris, we're getting close. Most Baptist churches have two main overseers, pastors and deacons. In larger Baptist churches, many have added elders between the level of pastor and deacons.
That's the way
And
it
some
was.
have both, and some just replaced it with elders. They're basically the same thing, but until you have both in the church, and they have different functions. The word deacon in the Greek means to serve. Now, I was going to tell you something, but it's coming up in the slide. I better not do it. In larger Baptist churches, they put this other level in there, or as in our church, we just have one senior pastor, several teaching pastors, and several other pastors, and 8 elders. I thought that's a low number, but if it gets too big, you can never reach, each other can come up with a right answer, because some say no, some say yeah. 8. I was at a small Baptist church in Houston, and we had 10 deacons. Okay,
Deacons or elders?
when I was in Houston, we didn't have anything called elders, it was just deacons.
Okay.
Yeah. Deacon qualifications and testing.
Well,
Yeah.
Could elders and deacons be interchangeable also?
Yeah, yeah.
They said both one.
Yeah, they don't really have any different functions except you have both of them. The elders is over the deacons, but because the elders are like overseers running the things in the church, and the deacons are to be servants, going more to the people, keeping in touch.
Aren't the elders more like a governing board?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said board, because when I was in Houston there, and I was in my 20s, I was 26 when they made me a deacon, and yeah, they were the Baptist Union was trying to get rid of the term deacon board or board of deacons. That sounds like a hammer, board of deacons.
Right.
The definitions of deacons is to serve. So in there, in the 1960s, down there in 1970s, I was trying to, all of us deacons were trying to get away from managing. You have groups in there, you have a financial department, you have several, let them people do their job. Willie does an outstanding job with the missions in Zambia, and what he doesn't come in here and give some a chance to say, I want to do this, I want to do it. We know that him and his committee, they have inside knowledge that we don't have, and we are to lean in on their wise decisions, So Willie does a good job. The care team leaders do a super job. They're almost like the deacons would be. And I'm gonna tell you some good things are coming out here. We had a prayer request that went out the other day, and so there's 7 teams, counting the one I have. And within 5 minutes, there were 7 sent back. So they have to keep the word ACNT and send it back to Glenda. And we hear that, boom, what's in? Boom, boom, boom. And you go, look, here's the last one. And in 5 minutes? Now, you got to understand, too, somebody may be out of pocket, can't do it for a while, but later during the day. Well, Glenda knows exactly which team hadn't put it in yet. When David's not putting it in there, we know he's fishing. Give you an out, David. So in 1968, at age 26, I was asked by the Post Oak Baptist Church in Houston if I would consider being a deacon. I used the phrase consider being, because you still had to get past the test, get ordained. Because there are several steps to my experience. In that church in Houston, 8 deacons and the pastor had selected me and one other guy, his name was Bob, to be candidates so they could get their number back to 10. That's where they like to stay with it. And those 10 were the same thing as elders or deacons kind of meshed together, smaller churches.
Right.
First, they read the qualifications for deacons as written in Timothy that we just read and in Titus that we just read. And they asked us if we could meet these standards. Bob, you answer first. That's hard. Can we meet them? Yeah. Do we slip up sometime? Well, yeah, we're human, but is there anything in there that would disqualify me or you? So that's what they were looking for. So we both agreed that we could, knowing that sometimes there'd be slip-ups. Next came the hard part, the test. At that time in 1968, there was no clear instructions as to how this test should be administered, except bring in an outside pastor and have them administer the quiz. Many outside pastors administered the test behind closed doors with only the local pastor and the visiting pastor and the deacons in attendance. In many cases, the visiting pastor would send the questions ahead to give the deacons candidates time to review and prepare for that. And that's normally what they did. But, oh no, the visiting pastor would not send the questions ahead of time, and he always administered the test before the congregation.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
I don't know how Bob and I made that. And the pastor of that church apologized, and he said, that's not the way it should be done. So they at least got it on a Wednesday night, so the crowd's a little smaller. Now let me just tell the rest of that story in there. That after we answered these questions and stuff, our pastor spoke again and said, anybody disapprove, and nobody would usually, we would go down and on the podium, get down on the level of the congregation, and we would get down on one knee, and every deacon that's ordained would come by and laying on of hands, and they would whisper in the ear. What did they say? Every one of them said almost something different. You know, God be with you. You know, God bless you for being willing to serve. Stay close to God. They had all these little words, little tidbits of what do you call it? All I had just whisper something in there, and that was pretty fascinating. But I became a deacon, and I already said about. They called it the Board of Deacons, and the Baptists was trying to drop that, so we did in that church. And then you go back and see what the meaning of the word deacons is, and it's to serve. So now then, we depended on committees, like we're already doing here. We depend on committee. Finance committee says so. You're a small group, you've studied it, you know what's best, we'll take your recommendation. And we're already doing that in here, and I think it's a wonderful thing that we do. Anyway, we were ordained. You have a question? You raise your hand. All right. Anyway, it was an honor for me to be chosen. And remember, you're a candidate when you're chosen. You're not there yet. But I tell you, that word us, Bob and I, about that test in front of the whole congregation.
I've never heard of that.
Well, our pastor there said, we've never seen it done this way, but the visiting pastor, the association's since one out, and I don't even remember his name, oh my gosh. But luckily, the questions were guided to things that you qualify for pretty much. It's supposed to be just kind of letting the congregation know what you know a little bit, but that was a scary time for both of us. Now let's read about women in the church as written by the Apostle Paul. I think we won't have enough time to do that. All right, we'll move on. Now he's continuing on in 1 Timothy 3. He said, in the same way, women are to be worthy of respect, not malicious talkers, but temperate and trustworthy in everything. Here's the clincher. Okay. Hold on just a minute. Let me get this thing. Possibly they were deacons in the church, or he's directed to the wives of the deacons. Either one, it's good. Bill.
Let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
You're going a little fast for me.
Okay.
I was in a church one time where a man was become a pastor, and he was in front of the board, but they had a whole lot of folks out in there at the time. And they quizzed him, and they went on, and the board stood up there and said, you're not qualified. A man stood up in that church who was with us in Vietnam, and he said, if it had not been for this man's ministry, I wouldn't be talking to you today.
Wow.
He had brought so many people to Christ over there at other places. The board reconsidered, and he got his commission to be a pastor. But that just goes to show, that was in a congregation.
Yeah.
And that was gonna rule him out. He came back and he was done. He got to be the pastor of a church that way.
If any candidate stood up and said, I meet all these qualifications, no big deal. What about the one that said conceited? Kind of hits home right there. But that brings up something else, Bill. In that church, we had one guy that wanted to become a deacon, and they said, you can't be a deacon in this church. And the guy said, why? Well, you divorced and married another woman. And it says, you are to be the husband of one wife. Okay? We didn't know if we gave the right answer to that guy or not, but later on, a week or two later, he came back. And he had prepared, and he said, in my old life, before I was born again, I had a new life. But now I have a new life according to the scriptures. I'm born again and I only have one wife. He served as a deacon. He served as that was well done by him to come. You know, how could you not say, you know, okay? But
Were there women deacons in your church?
not in my church, no. But there are in some. I'll touch on in a minute. But there are some churches that do this. There's, I don't know if having this slide or not, but there's 2 positions in this church, and I contacted the church to give me the right answer. Women cannot be the senior pastor, and they cannot be an elder. Everything else. Now you can have a visiting person that's a female. That's a teacher, really, teacher preacher, not a pastor over the people on there. So I don't know if that's right, wrong, or whatever. There were women deacons in the New Testament scriptures. There were women deacons. And some of them would be like what Bill said, if it wasn't for this person, I wouldn't be here. That lady deacon administered to me, and I, you know, so it could be either way. I went in and put it on the laptop. I said, "Can women be deacons?" Search. First one came up and said yes. Second one down said no. Yeah, no. It's probably 50-50. It is a person's opinion, you know. So since Josh is the senior pastor, he has the last say so. And but that's why I sent it to the church and said, let me know which ones women cannot serve. And there's just those 2 positions. Yeah.
In this church, are divorced men and women allowed to serve?
I don't know. I've not seen any type of qualifications from them. Steve Stroop wanted me to become an elder, and I said, you know, that would take away from my class. I don't want to do that. He said, would you at least come up here to the elders meeting and sit in there and talk? And if you don't want to, you can explain to the deacons or the elders why you don't want to be an elder. And I told him, if I felt God was calling me to be an elder, I'd do it. I feel like God wants me to be a teacher. And I'm not going to take another position in the church anywhere, because then it would take away maybe some of my teaching. But they talked a lot, and what Steve had told me away from those was, I need somebody with strong maturity. They got a lot of young guys in there as elders, and he was probably doing the right thing. But I just didn't feel that was right for me. And they thanked me and they understood. And so I just stick with the teaching. Now I've been in churches, well, that one even in Houston. Oh man, I got beat up bad. I forget it was that one in Richardson, where we got a new pastor, and I was the chairman of the deacons. They would send out a pastor on Sunday morning and Sunday night to preach, but you're in charge of Wednesday night. And then we had a pulpit committee. That's what the Baptists do. They send them out to different places and study it. Is this a good preacher? Would he like to come to this church? You know, but you almost have to go to a smaller church than you're in to get them to move on that. That was a hard job too. But to be chairman of the deacons and then serve on the finance committee, and we used to call it a Sunday school director, and I had so many things going. So it was Houston, because I said when we moved to Richardson, a block from us was our church. That we'd be going to a small church. And said, I'm going to go ahead and be a real quiet. I'm not going to tell them I'm a deacon, nothing. So I would get to drive home every other week to check on the house and stuff. But I was up here working, so Wednesday night I thought, see what the Wednesday night service is like in Richardson. And I went there and sat down, and as it was over, the pastor come out and sat down. He said, are you an ordained deacon? I was going to keep it quiet. I didn't. So I still hold to the thing. Too many positions. I should have looked up the scripture for you. Paul said it's better to do one thing and do it well than have many things and not do well. So that's where I stand on teaching. Yeah.
Is there a reason that they give that women can't do that?
No. It
Because
can
we
be.
do everything else, we're firemen, we're policemen.
Yeah.
Well, that's all new in the culture.
But there are some churches today that do have female deacons. And I guess all the ones that I've heard preach or look up on YouTube and stuff, I don't know if they really have a church or they're just speakers, but there's some women preachers too. Now, you'll notice that sometimes she'll bring
We
in a
had one
vision.
last week.
Yeah,
Oh, she wasn't a preacher. What was she?
Bible teacher, I mean, she
Was she
did
a
a lot of
pastor?
Bible studies too.
She claims to be.
yeah, they don't, that's wrong. They don't want to.
Confession?
What'd you say?
I'm not saying it again. I stand on the Bible, folks, and I just believe God has spoken about this, and I'll be quiet now.
Well, and
What are the chances of you being quiet?
That I'll be quiet, exactly. Don't want to-
Between me and Joe Beth, we agree to disagree at times.
Yes.
And still be friends. And that's what we did a couple of weeks ago, teaching on that like that, yeah. So why does the church not allow it? I don't know. I didn't ask, I just sent in the
Maybe I
email.
need to ask you.
Huh?
I'll ask you.
Okay.
in this church, Wally,
I said, you go,
don't they have like a limited time to serve in that position?
Yeah, I think they have a rotation system. I think you come on there and I think you do it 3 years or 2 years. And then the ones that have been there longer, they rotate off and you kind of move up and they keep it a rotation on there. Every once in a while, there's an email comes out and says, if anybody knows a candidate for elder, send the name in. So give you a chance to do that. But anyway, I didn't get to fool my church.
So, Wallace?
Yeah.
Does it mean since Beth Moore can speak here and then the speaker we had last week, does that mean that this is no longer a Baptist church?
Yes.
That's a hard one. I've tried, I heard Steve Stroop tell about it, I've heard Josh tell about it. It's a yes and no answer. We follow all the guidelines that the Baptist Association puts out, Southern Baptist, by the way.
Right.
But we don't want to be a member, because if you're a member, you have to send 10%
Yes.
of all your offerings you take into the Baptist, and they won't do that. They wouldn't just go out here and start another church. Now, I think that's a good thing. So we follow the pattern, but I don't think they're officially Baptist, but that's what we follow. I think that's the best answer, I think, the way Steve explained it and Josh one time. Does that make
So
sense,
if we're not
everybody?
Baptist, what are we?
He talks
Where
about
where
that
are
today.
we?
It's a
He talks about that today.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Well, we follow the Baptist guidelines, so I guess you could say we're Baptist, but we're not a member of the association.
Well, I read on the Facebook thing about, Josh said that this woman was Jana's favorite Bible teacher.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they don't mind bringing the lady into the letter.
I don't think we ever had a lady during preacher time when Steve was our senior pastor.
I don't remember
I
mine.
don't think
My
so.
memory's not
I
that
think
good.
Josh is the first
Yeah.
one to do that.
Yes, there were female deacons. We find an example written right by Paul in Romans 1:16.
Lydia?
He said, Paul said, I commend to you your sister, is it Phoebe? A servant of the church in Cenchrea. See, I put it on the bottom so I could pronounce it right. That you may welcome her in the Lord in a way worthy of the saints, and help her in whatever she may need from you, for she has been a patron and many, and of myself as well. I thought I had another one, deacons in it. So we go back and we say, in verse 12, a deacon must be faithful to his wife and must manage his children and his household well. Those who have served well gain an excellent standing and great assurance in their faith in Jesus Christ. Although I hope to come to you soon, I am writing you these instructions so that if I am delayed, you will know how people ought to conduct themselves in God's household, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and foundation of the truth. Let's see if I can go back a minute. All right. This last verse of scripture here in 16, this is how it's written in the NIV. Beyond all question, the mystery from which your true godliness springs is great. And then you have, he appeared in the flesh, was vindicated by the Spirit, was seen by angels, was preached among the nations, was believed on by the world, and was taken up into glory. An Old Testament thing that maybe was a quote for that. So that's the NIV version. And okay, getting too fast. I guess I didn't save that last one. I had it in another one so you could see it better. The last verse said, taken up in glory. And someday you and I will be taken up in glory too. Won't that be a great day? Great description of heaven.
Will be
Wallace, you know, when I think about people are saying, oh, what are we gonna do in heaven? I don't know why you even,
We're gonna play poker.
why you even worry after you hear that, you
Oh.
know?
Well, I want to say something. When I was so sick in the hospital, and I couldn't move, and I couldn't speak, and I couldn't do anything, you sent me a bunch of Christian songs.
Mhm.
And I would lay my phone there and play those songs, and I can't tell you the peace
Oh,
that
well,
they gave me. And I don't think I've ever told you that.
no.
But it was so peaceful. And one day, Joe was sitting there and he said, where'd you get all those songs? And I said, from my Bible teacher. So he knew about you before we got
Yeah.
married.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Time's up, but I have something that's about 5 minutes. Maybe I'll show you what we're doing next week. Anybody heard of this person? Akiana Kormarik. She painted that picture of Jesus when she was 8 years old. Now, you hear about all these people that say, I died and came back. You don't know if they're true or not. This is unbelievable. I'm going to give you a short version. We're going to give
already
another.
earning $45,000 for her work, and she's only 9. We discovered Akiana Kormarik in a small town in Idaho. To date, she's completed 40 paintings. Hello.
All those are painted. She's now 9 years old standing there. This is just
Tell me,
amazing.
You do faces very well, right? Tell us about this painting.
Well, this is when I was 8 years old. I did this with acrylics.
Did this at 8 and with acrylics?
Yes.
Very nice.
8 years old.
And I
painting.
like the fur because it's orange, because orange reminds me of listening.
Of listening.
Yes.
Of course it does. How so? How so is that? I'm missing that point. How?
Because when you look at the sunset,
Yeah.
it's orange, and you listen to the birds. And
Oh, okay.
so.
Okay, got that. That makes perfect sense now that you've explained it. Okay, I recognize this. This is from the girl from the National Geographic
Yes, that's
cover,
right.
right? Okay.
I did this when I was 8 years old, and with acrylics.
With acrylics? When you're
Yes.
eight?
Amazing.
And the red with the red, it reminds me of love.
Yeah.
It does. It gives me a big feeling.
Yeah, I like her. She's beautiful. Okay, who's this?
This is my self-portrait. I did this when I was 8 years old with
You did
acrylics.
8 was a big year for you. Oh my goodness, I don't know what 9's gonna bring, but this is huge. So this is a self-portrait of you. This
Yes.
is how you see yourself? What did you do? Take a picture, or how do you do yourself?
Well, I just take a mirror and I look at myself, and if I don't find the right color, I just dab it on my nose and see if it's the right color.
I do that too. That's great. This is gorgeous. Love that.
Thank you very
Love that.
much.
Who's this?
It's an African lady, and I did this with oils, my first oils when I was 8 years old.
Another big 8 thing. Busy year that 8. I think this is great. I mean, I think the depth of really richness and soulfulness in her eyes is really extraordinary.
Thank you.
This is my favorite. I don't know if it's because she's African, I'm African American, but I really think this is my favorite. Go
Thank
ahead.
you very much.
Did she model for you, or did you see her someplace, or what?
Well, I work from my imagination or from models or reference materials.
Okay, so which one was this?
I put all of them together.
You just, so this is imagination, model, reference material, and you bring it all together,
Yes.
and that's what you
Yes.
have there.
Yes. that's
Okay,
correct.
okay, and this?
This is
Prince
a
of
Jesus
Peace.
picture, and I did this when I was probably 8 to 9.
8 to 9.
Yes,
Okay.
8 and 9.
Is this your favorite?
Yes, it is.
It is. And why?
Because I like it with the light stuff, and I like
Yeah, I think the light,
hands.
I think the
world.
light feature is great. Now, how do you get the light on his hands that way? Where's the light source coming from?
It's coming from the
Above,
sky.
from the
Yes,
sky. Of course,
from
he's
the sky.
Jesus. Of course it is.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. That is amazing.
Thank you very
You know what
much.
is amazing too? I mean, you picked up the color in the eyes and some of the same,
Yes.
yeah, texture of the hair and the vision. Really good. You're obviously gifted, right? Where does this come from?
It comes from God.
It comes from God.
Okay, I got another one that's one we'll save for the next week about this young lady, and she'll tell you she has visions, and she sees this thing, and she goes and paints them. And she said, there's colors in heaven that we don't have down here.
Mhm.
Somebody asked her, did you try to make that color with paints? And she said, I couldn't. So anyway, I'll do another one, a different interview, and
How old is she
she's,
now?
she's in her 20s. She's some of her paintings sell for almost $1 million. Started painting with oils when she's 6 years old. No teacher, no nothing. It has to be coming from God.